Okay, so for today's video, we're going to go over a couple reasons why you might have shoulder pain. So if you're experiencing some shoulder pain right now, here are a couple things that you can look for and a couple diagnoses, generally speaking, of what it could be and a little bit about what you can do. All right, Nadine, what's the first one?
All right, so I'm going to talk through 3 different things that might be going on with your shoulder. The first of which is going to be a strain of the rotator cuff. So usually a strain of the rotator cuff is going to happen when you're doing something with a lot of volume or doing something with your shoulders that you haven't done in a while. So a couple examples of this. First one being if you haven't played tennis in a while, you go out, you play a bunch of tennis, and then afterwards you're really feeling it in the shoulder. You likely strain the muscle because you haven't used it in a while in that way. A lot of force when you're playing tennis as well. When you're looking for a strain, a couple of the things that you can do at home to see if that might be what it is test out some of those rotator cuff muscles and see if those muscle tests are painful. So a couple of examples of this. So Joel, I'm gonna have you bring your arm out to the side.
Okay.
Yep. And then thumb's gonna be towards the ceiling. And then I'm just gonna hold on to his shoulder here, and I'm gonna give him a little bit of pressure downwards.
Yeah. You could even do it to yourself a little bit if you're at home alone, or have someone press down on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So something like that, if that's reproducing your pain a little bit, it takes your rotator cuff to stabilize you in that position. So that might be a strain going on there, and something like that is gonna be it's going to get better with time. Icing it is going to be your friend too. And then if you want to continue on with whatever activity might have strained it, that's where you need to do some great rotator cuff strengthening and maybe just take the volume back a little bit. Maybe don't go out and play for 3 hours and just start with 30 minutes out on the courts.
Yeah, and a strain tends to be like, the whole thing's just a little achy. It's usually not like one specific spot. It's just like, oh man. That whole thing just feels sort of sore. Like it's another common characteristic of just a strain of the rotator cuff. And you can also get it with possibly lifting something sort of heavy, like just doing a little bit more. I felt it recently actually when I was just doing some back squats, and I wasn't used to getting my shoulders all the way back into this position. It's been a while since I did it, and my shoulders are a little sore just from being in that position. So that was just a little bit of a strain from lifting that you could experience.
Yep. All right, so the second thing that we'll talk about is some biceps tendonitis. So typically when someone is experiencing some biceps tendonitis, they're gonna feel it in the front of the shoulder, really that anterior part of the shoulder right here. And a lot of times with the biceps tendonitis, it's actually coming on because that rotator cuff is not very strong, right? So the rotator cuff is supposed to do a lot of stabilization of the shoulder joint itself. When that's not working like it should, the other muscles tend to have to take the load, right? So take over what the other muscles are not able to do. So one way that you can check out if you have biceps tendonitis going on, I'm gonna show it on Joel, but this is also one you can do on yourself. Joel, I'm gonna have you bring your arm all the way straight in front of you. Perfect. And then your palm's gonna be just flat, but up towards the ceiling. And then you're gonna put your force actually all the way down at the wrist, right? So I'm gonna tell him, just don't let me move your arm. And I'm gonna try and push down. It doesn't take a lot to practice that one.
Well, technical difficulties.
Getting a little bit of calliope action on the camera right now. And if that hurts right in the front of the shoulder there, that's typically going to be some biceps tendonitis.
Yeah, and you'll feel it just you'll feel it if you kind of like dig in there into the front of your shoulder. It tends to be where you'll feel it.
Yeah, people that have tendonitis there, you'll see them during the day. They're always kind of digging in there.
Yeah.
Trying to rub on it. Rubbing on that biceps tendon is actually not going to make it any better. Sometimes you're actually making it worse and flaring it up a little bit. Tendons do not respond well to massage. So it's the muscle belly itself that usually responds a little bit better to soft tissue work, not the tendons.
Yeah. A common exercise you can do for that to get started with is just to lower weight slowly down like this, an eccentric. If you need more instruction on that, we could probably shoot another video on eccentrics or something, but if you go to see a physical therapist, that's commonly what they'll have you start doing treatment with a little bit of rest at first.
Yep. And ice is your friend also for the tendonitis, especially if it's a more recent thing that's come on for you. You got some inflammation in there. Ice is always going to be good for it. Okay, so on to the third thing, impingement.
Impingement, yes. With a little bit of
We're supposed to say it at the same time.
Oh, we are? My bad. And with a little bit of bursitis thrown in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So typically when you're talking about rotator cuff impingement, you are talking about as you lift the arm up, you start to get a painful feeling in the shoulder. Some people describe it as a sharp pain or a pinchy feeling in the shoulder. So as the arm comes up, the shoulder blade should not be coming up with it per se, right? So the shoulder blade should be staying down as the arm comes up, especially just in that first bit of motion there. So when your rotator cuff is a little bit weaker, what happens is sometimes deltoid, that bigger muscle in the shoulder, tends to take over a bit. And what can happen is it can actually pull that bone upwards instead of kind of rotating the bone down in the shoulder joint as you come up. So typically another diagnosis that rotator cuff strengthening can really be helpful for. Couple of ways that you can check out if you have rotator cuff impingement in the shoulder. Special tests, first of which we're gonna try on Joel. You're gonna have your arm out in front of you, 90-degree bend at the elbow, perfect. And then this one you will want somebody else to probably do on you. It's a hard one to do to yourself. So I'm gonna take Joel's arm and he's gonna give me the weight of it here. And then I'm just gonna rotate his arm inwards. And that's how we're gonna check for some impingement. So typically, if you get a click in there, you have a little bit of impingement. If you have a small click and it's really not bothering you at all, not usually a big deal. But if you feel that clicky feeling and this is really painful for you when somebody else is doing it, that's typically a sign of some impingement in there. And then the other one is gonna be an overhead test. So you're gonna go up overhead to the side like you're doing some abduction. Perfect. And Calliope is gonna jump up and make sure your abs are engaged. And then from here, hello baby. From here, I'm actually gonna give him just a little bit of overpressure into that. And again, another great test for impingement to see if that motion is painful or not. So rotator cuff strengthening is gonna be great for impingement. And when we talk about the bursitis aspect of things, there is a little bursa in there, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, well, I like to think of it, bursas are a little interesting because I like to think of it as an internal blister, meaning like, you know, if you got a blister on your hand before there was a blister, there wasn't really anything there, but it kind of forms out of nowhere. And so that is very similar to what a bursa is. And so when your arm repeatedly pinches up towards that acromion in the shoulder, then just this little fluid-filled sac happens and it hurts. And so that's where, like, if this test that Nadine first did on me, like people have it, you'd feel it almost right away. She turned mine pretty far just like this. I don't really feel anything. But if you had bursitis and actual impingement, you would feel it'd be really sore and sharp. But yeah, I mean, as you can see with most of these, rotator cuff strengthening and not just strength, but kind of sequencing how the shoulder works with those rotator cuff muscles is the key to getting these better. And this is a lot of what we do in physical therapy to work specifically on these three very common shoulder diagnoses that you might have when you have pain. So anyway, that's about it. And thanks to Calliope for being part of the video. And, if you have any questions, just please comment below. And we'll see you next time.